Hey guys, welcome back to Diaries of a 20-something. I'm Paige Marquez, your host. I want to apologize for the break-in episodes last week. I had the flu, so that was pretty unfortunate, but I'm finally back and better than ever. Today's episode is going to be on a topic that I've been wanting to do for a long time, but was waiting to find what words to say. This week, we're talking all about divorce or growing up with divorced parents and how much that can impact us later in our lives and even then. Growing up with divorced parents can feel like growing up in two different lives, and it has shaped me in so many ways, and I really wanted to get into it with you guys because it's so common and I feel like it's kind of still taboo regardless of how common it is. People are weird when it's brought up. I feel like the negative things that impacted us in our childhood really start to manifest once we hit our early 20s and even our late teenage years. My parents divorced when I was young. I think I was around 6 or 7, and over time I've come to really understand how that affected me then and even more so now. So let's get into it. There are so many aspects that come to my mind when I think of growing up in a divorced household. And one thing I want to say as a blanket statement is not all divorces are the same. Some are very civil and some are not. Growing up, I always got the questions, did you get 2 Christmases? Do you get 2 birthdays? And the answer is yes. But outside of that, I really can't think of anything super positive that came from it. The things that come to my mind when I think about my parents' divorce, it is just the general instability of my life and packing up every week to switch houses and like the embarrassment, which honestly was more common when I was super young rather than now because it's super common. But when I was young, it wasn't as common until I hit like end of middle school, I would say. So when I was younger, I'd always be embarrassed to like have friends over because like, oh, like my mom's not here and my dad's not here, like da 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 da, you know? And it's weird to explain that at a young age. When I think of home, neither my dad's house or my mom's house ever really felt like home. What felt like home was the house that we had when they were together. It may have not been a super happy home, but it was still home. And it's really interesting because I've talked to my sister a lot about this and she doesn't really remember anything from the divorce. I remember a lot. I can't say I remember all of it because I don't know, but I do remember a lot of it. And I feel like my mom always knew how much it impacted me. It's always been easier to talk to my mom about more emotional topics, but I don't think my dad ever really knew how much it impacted me, probably until this episode. So, hey, Dad. Love you. I have memories of like hiding behind a wall and like listening to their fights, trying to figure out what it was. And my mom sleeping in my room. My dad like always being so irrationally angry and like easy to set off. Those things, they stay with you, you know? And I think it's interesting how sometimes your memory will block out trauma, but other times it'll never let you forget it. I wonder why that is and why it picks and chooses, because my sister doesn't remember anything. And it's actually crazy to me. I'm like, how? But when you grow up and you watch your parents fight so much, it really does show you that your parents are human too, and that nobody is perfect in any way, shape, or form. I've seen sides of my dad and my mom that I wish I, to this day, have not seen. And growing up, I was always a daddy's girl, and even now, I would say. But there was a break in that, and I want to say it was around middle school and high school, because for me, from my parents' divorce, at least from what I can remember, the divorce wasn't so bad, but after the divorce was really bad. It was almost like they were both so angry with each other. I couldn't trust that they could be in the same room without them freaking out on each other. And so yeah, that like started to change in middle school and high school. I think because I started to understand what they were fighting about when I was a kid, you know, hiding behind the walls and listening over the phone and like listening against the door like a freak. I heard what they were saying, but they didn't mean anything to me. I just could definitely tell that they were both very very upset with each other. I will say my dad was really good about not involving me and my sister in what was going on. He never told us any updates. He never, he kept it very separate. And I think that that is a very good thing. My mom, on the other hand, never really kept it super private. Not that she would be telling us constantly updates on the situation, but if I asked her, she would definitely tell me. Looking back, I don't really know which is better or if one is better than the other. I don't really think there's any way to tell, and I think that's kind of a slippery slope. My dad always put such a big emphasis on stability and staying in the same place. Like, we have been living in the same house for, I want to say, 15 years. And outside of that, there was only one other house that we lived in post the divorce. My mom, on the other hand, I mean, so many. Like, I want to say 7 sounds good in my head. 7 sounds right. So yeah, like, even though my dad kept things really stable, my mom wasn't really able to. So because of that, I've never really felt stable anywhere. And this isn't even just talking about houses. This is talking about in relationships, in housing, in a job. Like, I've just never felt stable. Anything can change at any second and you have to be ready. So I don't know if I will ever feel stable or home anywhere. And to be so honest with you, I don't even fully know what that feels like. I just can't imagine it almost. It's kind of like thinking of a new color. Like, it just like isn't working. Like I said, before the divorce and during the divorce was not nearly as bad as after the divorce from my own memory. For years, they could not be in the same room without an argument or a fight or whatever. Up until like kind of recently, I would say end of high school, maybe, they started being able to be in the same room without screaming at each other, which was nice. For the longest time, because of that, I had severe anxiety if I knew that I was going to be put in a situation where I'd have to be around them while they were together. And even now, like, they don't fight now, but even if I know that like they're going to be together in the same room or something, or we're going to be doing a family activity, which we've been starting to do recently, which is a little weird, but I'll get to that. I just get anxious if I know that they have to interact. And it's unfortunate, but it's the way it is. I mean, think about how I was brought up, And it's not like divorce is something that I didn't know about as a kid. I mean, it's so common. And even now, I think the divorce rate's like 70% or something crazy like that. Like, one thing I have noticed that is super common, at least from my own life experience, is that boys normally don't have divorced parents. I don't really know if it's like a girl thing either. It's just most guys I know, and when I say most, I mean a big majority, do not have divorced parents, and pretty much every girl I know has divorced parents. Another thing I've always noticed when it comes to relationships is people that don't have divorced parents normally have better and healthier relationships overall. I feel like the main issues I have that stemmed from the divorce are definitely more prominent within my relationships that I have with other people. Overall, I would say the divorce made me hyper independent. I have become really good at looking after myself and taking care of myself mentally and physically. I think because mentally I had to do it from a young age, but at the same time, I do definitely have like severe attachment issues, not really with friends, but with men, like people I'm dating. I think those issues definitely originate from the divorce because I've had them for as long as I can remember, but I'm sure other factors have influenced them as well. But I think the main thing was definitely the divorce. However, on the flip side, one thing that the divorce has really taught me about myself is that I never want to be divorced. I think marriage is not taken as seriously as it should be. And if you know me, you'll know, like, I've definitely said the words before, like, I don't know if I'm going to get married. And that's because I would never settle. If I reached a point like mid 30s, 40s, whatever, and I didn't find someone that was suitable for marriage, I'm not just going to marry anybody I see or like settle with a boyfriend I've been with forever. Like, I'm just not that person. I think marriage is really serious. My dad has always told me that he doesn't believe in divorce. It wasn't his decision, basically. And I think to an extent, I believe that as well. Like, I don't believe in divorce. I feel that if you marry someone, you have to mean it. The same thing goes for commitment in relationships to me. I've never been somebody who's, had a lot of boyfriends, and that's not because I can't pull men. I just take it very seriously. And I wouldn't commit to somebody unless I really knew that they were worth it. I know I come on here and talk a lot about casual dating and how fun it is, but the reality is that I don't want to be doing this forever. When I really commit to somebody, I mean it. And honestly thinking, I don't think I've ever fully committed to anybody before. There's always been one foot in, one foot out, like ready to leave if I had to. I take relationships really seriously if they aren't casual, if that makes sense. I'm not one of those girls that has had many boyfriends. I've had one boyfriend in my entire life, and unfortunately many situationships. And it's because I'm picky and I know my own worth and I don't need a boyfriend to not feel lonely. You know what I mean? I love really hard and really passionately, and I'm not a person that sees that as a weakness, but I also see love as a choice. Marriage is a choice that you can't back out on. Otherwise, what are the vows for? I mean, vows are there for a reason. And if you're just going to say them and then get divorced, I think it's like, what is it for then? Like, what's the point of getting married in the first place? You know what I mean? Conflict in relationships will always happen, and relationships will always have their ups and downs, especially in marriages, and that's okay. But essentially, what a marriage is a promise to always treat each other with love and try your absolute hardest to make it work. And I think if you do those things, there would be no reason to get divorced. And when I say try your absolute hardest, I mean absolutely try your absolute hardest. Think about how many times you could have done so much better if you actually tried your hardest. I feel like nobody actually does anymore and they just say it. So my parents' divorce definitely had a major impact on how I see relationships and how I see marriage in general. Going off of how independent I've always been, I've also always been very resilient, and that is actually a compliment I get a lot. I have been through more traumatic events than I think most people would deem fair at my age, and I always come back stronger. I'm very resilient because you really have no choice but to be if you want to make it anywhere in this world. I learned to look out for myself mentally from a young age. I think I also protect myself a lot mentally by putting up a wall. I would say outwardly I'm not emotional or empathetic, but on the inside I definitely am. I've just never been comfortable showing that side of me, and that's something that I'm trying to get comfortable with. I don't know why, but so deep rooted in me, there's like something that says that those feelings are like a weakness and it shows that you're weak, and that's just not true. I think it actually makes you stronger, and I applaud anybody who can actually comfortably talk about their emotions. Like, even like talking about this makes me kind of uncomfortable. Like, I'm already getting kind of like jittery. On the other hand, though, because I knew a general idea of my parents' sides in the divorce, I have always been extremely open-minded. I don't think any action is inherently right or wrong or bad or good. I think everything is circumstantial. I really can and want to see each side of a situation before I speak on it or form an opinion on it or act on it. And because of that, I'm also extremely understanding. No matter how strongly I react to something, it's not because I don't understand, it's because I do understand. And I think that those are positive qualities that I've gained. However, shutting down my emotional side has never been a positive quality, and I know that because I shove everything down, and then I often have, not often, like every year, 2 years, I have like a breakdown that lasts some time, and I think I'm on the tail end of one right now. But yeah, they normally last like 2 or 3 months where I just lose my mind, and it's normally directed at someone or something because I'll let something build for so long, and then the last thing that just pushes me over the edge, I'll just direct all of it onto that person. And I know that's not fair. Like, I don't get mad often, but when I am, I'm like furious, like steaming. But all in all, I don't wish my parents didn't get divorced. I think that they are great people, just not together. It's okay. Some people just aren't meant to be together, but I do think that they did not think through getting married. Even my friends, like throughout the years that have met both of my parents, like I always, not always, but I often get the question, how did your parents ever get married? And honestly, it's a valid question. They're great people. They're just very, very, very different. There's something nice about being different from your partner, you know, like yin and yang. But I think foundationally and fundamentally, you do have to feel the same way about important things. But like I touched on earlier, I am very careful when it comes to commitment of anything. Of anything. This isn't even just in relationships, but mainly in relationships. I cannot commit for I am so scared of it, and I think it's because of my parents' divorce, like, genuinely, and I'm not trying to sit here and, like, point fingers at my parents and, like, "Oh, you guys messed me up so bad." Like, no. I'm just trying to, like, explain the reality of how much it actually affects somebody and how much I'm realizing it affected me over the years as I grow and as I mature and as I enter the real world and become my own person outside of my parents. I really need to know someone before I decide to commit. I don't even think I would get married unless I was with somebody for close to 10 years, or at least like somewhere around 10 years, because you just have to be so sure. Marriage is so serious. And sometimes I joke about like, oh, like having an ex-husband is like kind of cool, like to say that you have an ex-husband, but like genuinely, I don't actually want an ex-husband. I can have the best point of view of any scenario, and I think anybody who knows me well would say that. I can literally look at the most positive side of the worst situation and be like, well, that's my life. But like seriously, I don't want to be divorced. But if I had to, I'd be like, oh, being an ex-wife is kind of cool. You know what I mean? The fact is, it can be really challenging growing up in two houses. And yeah, you get 2 Christmases, 2 birthdays, but you also get a whole lot of baggage. It can be really challenging growing up in 2 homes, especially when your parents are still fighting. I mean, even now, if someone's yelling at me or around me, I shut down. Like I have like a real PTSD response from my parents' fights. And I just don't think that they understand the magnitude of how much the divorce actually impacted me now and just throughout the years. It really does shape who you are and who you become as a person, especially in your relationships. I think that's the biggest thing. I'm not upset with either of my parents for how things played out. Like I said, I think that they're great people, just not great people together, and everything happens the way that it's meant to happen. And it definitely does change who you are, but that's okay. As long as you love yourself, you're grateful for it. We're all family at the end of the day, and now my parents are at a point where they can more than coexist in the same place at the same time, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. We're actually spending Thanksgiving and Christmas together as a family this year, which I don't think we've ever done since they were together, which is crazy. So I'm excited for that. Looking at the positive, hoping for the best, expecting the worst. I'm just so grateful that my parents can now coexist. And I know that that's not the reality for most people. But guys, I promise it took a really long time for them to get here. I mean, they could not coexist from probably I was 5 to 17. So it took a long time, but they finally reached a point where they can be in the same room and I think almost enjoy each other's company. So this is good. It's a move in the right direction. I'm genuinely so grateful and so happy with it. If you guys have any stories of your divorced parents or any questions about it, just drop a comment or DM me on Instagram. I know that this is a complicated topic, but I think when your family decides to separate, the best thing you could do is reach out to somebody who understands it. So if any of you guys are in that place right now, please DM me if you need it, and I will be happy to help you. Next week's episode is going to be all about realigning with your passions once life gets busy. This was Diaries of a 20-something. I want to say episode 24, which means we are almost to the 6-month mark of when I started this, guys, which is insane. I cannot believe I've been doing this for 6 months now. Thank you so much for watching and being on this journey with me. I literally love doing this so much. Like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys all next Friday. Mwah.